car insurance. So what kinds of term can you get? Now again, what most people will refer to when they're talking about term insurance is what's referred to as annual renewable term. Every year the cost goes up because every year we get closer to death. However, in the marketplace now, you can buy 10-year up through even 40-year term policies. So if you're 20 years old, you could buy a 35-year policy that would insure you until you're 55 years old. Much like if you had a whole life policy, you could have the exact same thing. Some of this is renewable term, some of it's annual. You can do it every 5 years sometimes. Convertible term allows you to convert from term insurance into whole life or some other kind of cash value policy. Kind of have to be a little bit careful here because you got to worry about, are you insurable? Usually there's some cost to the conversion, so you have to worry a little bit about that. There is a type of insurance that's called term insurance. Essentially, this is what we refer to as credit life insurance. And for the most part, credit life insurance is very expensive. You usually don't need it if you've adequately addressed your risk needs. If you've addressed the amount of risk that you have, the things that you would want to pay off, and you are insured for that, you shouldn't have to buy more life insurance for that. So again, decreasing term is very expensive and usually not necessary. We talked a little bit about convertibility, being able to switch from term to whole life. That's certainly a possibility, although probably not a wise thing to ultimately do. And term insurance is flexible. I mean, you can shop around. You can find different kinds of term policies, see which companies are offering the best rates, etc. So there's lots of options and opportunity to find a good company to work with. So now let's move on and talk about cash value. Cash value life insurance is different from term in that cash value has two parts. It has a part that is insurance, and it has a part that is investment. So when you buy one of these, you're buying two things. Well, without going much further, let's think this through. You could buy one thing, or you could buy something that has two things. If you're buying something that offers you an additional benefit, you usually pay more for it, and cash value life insurance across the board is more expensive than term insurance. One of the things that we frequently talk about is, really the best phrase for this is something called death protection, but of course you can't protect against death, and a lot of people actually use income protection. I mean, the reason we use the word protection is because people don't like the word insurance. So it's just a way of talking about the same thing, but in a little bit better phraseology, if you will. One of the things they talk about with cash value is they talk about the idea is that this is permanent insurance. You can have it forever. So exactly what happens is as you buy the insurance, from the day you buy it, it's going to gather a cash value until you turn 100 years old. And when you turn 100 years old, the phrase is it becomes endowed. And when it endows, they're going to give you the amount. So if you live to be 100, they would give you the cash value that's in the account. Now with whole life policies, one of the things that it guarantees is it guarantees you in the end that the cash value is also the face of the policy. They talk about features, they talk about how flexible cash value insurance is. I'm not 100% clued into the flexibility issue. They talk that you could obviously borrow from this cash value. This in general is just a bad idea. Here's the question. If you borrow from your cash value, do you have to pay yourself back? And the answer is you don't have to pay yourself back, but who do you pay interest to? When you borrow money from a life insurance company, you pay interest on the loan, and you pay that interest to the life insurance company. So if you don't pay it back, you still keep paying interest. So where does the interest come from? If you don't increase your premiums to cover the interest, then it comes from cash value, and eventually your policy will lapse. You could buy a paid up policy, right? Essentially you can say, look, I don't want to pay anymore. Whatever my cash value is, give me a term policy for a specified period of time. Again, we're going to talk about premiums. We're going to talk about dividends a little bit later on. I mean, they talk about that this is a good emergency. You can use this for an emergency fund. It's just a very poor choice for an emergency fund. So they give us an example here, and they're trying to give us the impression here, or the idea that term policies increase. And what you can see here is that at least 5 years, and sometimes less than 5 years, they're showing that the value of the policy increases. Till you get to age 65, and it's like almost 3 times more than what the level premium was. So how much would you pay per month for a $100,000 policy? Again, this is just it's a misleading attempt to convince you that term insurance is bad. You could buy a 35-year fixed term policy. So it would be fixed in premium for 35 years. So let's think how this works as far as prices are concerned. And again, this information is kind of old. It's 1998, but the relationships are still in general. The most expensive kind of insurance you can buy is whole life insurance, and that's what most people own. On average, term insurance, 1998, term insurance was about $2.58 a thousand. Universal Life's $12.15. Again, it's still, even if you go to $12.15, that's essentially 2.5 times. 3.5 or 4 times more than Universal Life is. So again, that's kind of hard to see. Let's talk about what we could do with this and what it ultimately means for the investor. If you buy a whole life policy of $100,000 at age 30, again, it costs an average of $17.12. That's $1,712 per year. If you buy term, that's $2.58 per thousand. That's $258 a year. So the difference between that is $1,454. So let's think, this whole life policy is growing. And I'll tell you now, usually it's around 4 to 4.5% is the interest rate that they guarantee that it'll grow at. So you're putting money in there, $1,700 a year. Not all of that is growing, only a portion of it. You don't know what portion, but a portion's growing. On the other hand, if you put this money in this term policy, you could actually invest the difference, the $1,454. So in 35 years, if it just averaged 12%, you'd have $627.38, or $627,638. Let's assume it only got half of that. It only grew to $300,000. The difference is this whole life policy will never be worth more than $100,000. And they guarantee that. And they guarantee it will get to $100,000, but when you're 100 years old. So which would you rather have? Something that will at most get to $100,000, or with an opportunity to save outside the insurance policy? I mean, even if you got half of that, $300,000 versus $100,000, it just makes sense to me that you should. The phrase that's used in the life insurance world is, you should buy term and invest the difference, because term is cheap. Take the extra amount, put that into the stock market or into something that's going to earn certainly greater than 4%. So let's talk more about whole life insurance. The essential features: you have guaranteed fixed premiums. There's a guaranteed death benefit. It offers, again, this protection plus savings. Now, it's a very conservative investment. You're only going to earn around 4%. There are a lot of variations of whole life policies, though. I mean, there could be limited pay, single premium, right? I mean, there's all different forms of these, but they all work essentially the same way. So what are the efficient or the important issues? Investment risk with whole life insurance remains with the insurance company. That's the guaranteed nature of this policy. They guarantee you certain things. And if they're going to guarantee you a certain return, you know that that return is going to be relatively low. So this might be appropriate for somebody that's very conservative and has a very long-term need. But in general, there are opportunities that are better out there. There's better ways of insuring and investing than combining it into one product. So let's talk about exactly how this works. When you buy a policy, $100,000, as you're making premiums, up here see it's $935 a year, the savings value grows. So let's think about what happens when you buy a cash value policy. You buy three things. You buy protection to age 100. You buy the cash value. You have this emergency cash is building up. And you have retirement income. So when you turn 65, you can convert this policy to cash for life insurance or for retirement. The problem is you can only use one of these things at a time. So let's say that a person dies when they're, let's go ahead and use 65 years old. If you died when you're 65 years old, the cash value life insurance policy would pay your beneficiaries $100,000. What happens to the $45,000 that's in your savings piece? Well, they give it to you, but it's part of the $100,000. So in reality, if you pass away at age 65, they give you your $45,000, and then they pay you $54,000 to make up the difference to get to that $100,000 amount. You'll never get more than the face value from the policy. Universal life is another kind of life insurance. It's another kind of cash value. In this case, the premium payments could be flexible. You could keep them fixed, but they could be flexible. The death benefit, it's kind of adjustable. If you change the premiums that you pay, you're changing, in effect, the death benefits. This should be death, not debt. Sorry about that. The investment risk here shifts from the insurance company to the policyholder. So now how this thing grows is now your responsibility, not the insurance company's responsibility. And it's not even that you get choices, because they're going to invest it in an interest-bearing kind of an account, and they choose what the accounts are. So you get the risk, but you don't get to choose the kind of investment that's there. So essentially what we have here is a variation of universal life. Is they could index it. They could tie it to some kind of interest rate, maybe like Lehman's interest rate or something like that. So again, let's kind of continue on. What are the important issues? You would like to see a high level of transparency. You'd like to be able to see and know what's going on. You have some flexibility of premium payments, but of course we know they're going to alter or change as you, the death benefit is going to change as you change the premium payments. The policy itself could be tailored to changing needs. We have some flexibility with this. In the end, you also now have choices. They refer to this, I refer to this as option A, option B. Option A means that if you pass, you get the face value, and that's all you get, much like the cash value policy. But you could also choose option B. If you choose option B, you'll get the face value, but you'll also get the cash value. So you would get both things. The thing that you need to kind of think through here, though, is what's going to be the cost difference between option A policies and option B? Option B is going to be much more expensive. Again, most insurance professionals don't even offer option B because the other stuff's too expensive as it is. They don't want to add more expense and make the sale look even less desirable. So again, in contrast to whole life, universal life has flexible premiums, the death benefit's adjustable, and investment risk shifts from the insurance company to the policy holder. Let's talk just a little bit how whole life insurance works, though, so you can kind of see what goes on inside the policy. And we'll go through an example of this when we get to class, but essentially what happens is there's this faucet represents the premium that you pay. And of course that premium goes into this bucket, and that's where the investment grows. The challenge, though, is that this is a leaky faucet and there are expenses that come out. Now, in every life insurance policy that you get, they'll tell you what these costs are. So you can calculate them. You should know exactly what the expenses are. Once the money gets into the cash value, of course, then it can grow. But what's different from universal life from whole life is that in this case, you're actually going to be told what it costs to insure you. And that has to come out of this cash value. So these ladles come out. Every month it comes out, and it's going to scoop out enough money to pay for life insurance. And the challenge is, as you get older, the cost of insuring you goes up. So if you have a fixed premium going in, and you have a variable growing expense coming out, eventually the expense has to exceed the premium. So what happens when the costs of having the policy are more than what you pay? Well, eventually you get to the bottom of the barrel and your policy lapses. And of course that's going to happen when you're older, not when you're younger. We'll talk about this a little bit as an example and show you some things in class. And I'm going to stop here with this part of this chapter. There'll be a part 2, and we'll start that